Welcome to the BlockVerge podcast, where we will be discussing all things blockchain every day. I'm your host, Derek Newman. On today's show, we'll cover what could potentially be the future of blockchain, how blockchain technology could help in national defense, and what's happening with Long Blockchain, if you remember them. For Friday, August 3rd, 2018, the Green Tea with Honey edition. Let's get started. The challenge was laid, hands were shaken, the bet was placed. Or so it appeared. At CoinDesk's Consensus 2018 conference this year, Jeff Lubin, founder of the Ethereum company ConsenSys, agreed to wager any amount of Bitcoin with Jimmy Song of Blockchain Capital that within 5 years, the blockchain would have a number of working applications serving real users. That's probably a bet worth taking. Hundreds of millions of dollars have already been invested by some of the world's biggest companies on the future of the blockchain. JP Morgan has a blockchain program. Barclays Accelerator, a 13-week program for startups organized by one of the world's largest banks, has provided space and funding for a number of blockchain-based fintech companies. Businesses working on blockchain-based services include IBM, which is trying to build a tracking tool for shipping companies and retail chains, Eastman Kodak, which is experimenting with the blockchain to create repositories for stock images, and Spotify, which wants to use the blockchain to manage copyrights. Investors in blockchain projects include Peter Thiel, Sequoia Capital, and Anderson Horowitz, as well as Google, Goldman Sachs, Visa, and Deloitte. All of these companies and experts are betting millions of dollars that a decentralized ledger can do things that other forms of technology just cannot. They're likely wasting their money and their time, but not all of it. Critics like Song tend to argue that much of what blockchain-based products are trying to do can be done without the use of a blockchain. A decentralized ledger may be able to help keep track of items flowing through a shared economy, such as apartments, boats, and bicycles, but companies like Airbnb, Uber, and City Bike schemes have all done fine with little more than apps and barcodes. Triple-signed receipts are much easier to implement and meet the same security guarantees as a decentralized ledger with a public key cryptography, proof of work, networking, and database technology. A blockchain can replace escrow services, but would it be cheaper, more secure, or easier to use than a bank account and a trusted third party? Using the blockchain can also remove the versatility that makes startups so agile. New firms in Silicon Valley work long hours to shoot out minimum viable products before their seed funding ends. They refine those products, match them to audiences, and show venture capitalists that they're on the right track, that they can actually make something that people will pay to use, in order to win enough money to reach the next milestone. Businesses that use an ICO to raise large amounts of funds, though, can behave more like investment banks. They start with lots of money, move slowly and develop their product, and if it's truly decentralized, they won't be able to change it when it hits the market. A blockchain could slow them down. Those arguments are fair, but for anyone old enough to have lived through the early days of the dot-com bubble, like me, they're also very familiar. The late 90s were a time when you could have launched a company selling elephants' underwear, but as long as you called it an internet business, someone would turn up with a giant bag of money and believe that you could be rich. And you would also have plenty of people willing to tell you that you were crazy and that the whole internet thing was overrated and would soon fade away. Well, how's that working out for them? Clearly, that didn't happen. A large number of businesses, companies that never had a real product or offered a proper service beneath their URLs, were left exposed when the financial tide flowed out. But some companies did survive, and the ones that survived have thrived. Amazon is a multi-billion-dollar business, so are Google, eBay, and PayPal. They were all able to create products on the web that other people wanted to use, and were able to turn that use into revenues. None of them have existed without the web. And that's exactly what's happening now. No one knew when Google started that it would destroy Alta Vista and eat Yahoo. No one knew that eBay would leave On Sale in the dust, or that startup called Facebook would kill off Friendster and MySpace. Investors certainly didn't, which is why they spread their money around, hoping that some of it would stick to a business with a real product in an entirely new market environment. The blockchain is ideal for keeping track of a currency and protecting it against fraud. We don't know yet what else it's good for. Until developers have finished their work, we won't know whether it will become the underlying technology behind a rejuvenated sharing economy or whether it will just power banking services, making transactions cheap and almost instantaneous. The blockchain has already underpinned a new currency. Investors are now betting that it can do something else, and they're placing their bets on a bunch of new technologies. Most of those new technologies will fail, but some of them, a few, will succeed. And if I were a betting man, I'd put some Bitcoin on that. The news is filled with wild promises made by blockchain advocates and the exaggerated suspicions of its opponents. By enabling the creation of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ether, and XRP, blockchains have made some people fabulously wealthy, while also, at times, facilitating fraud and money laundering. Yeah. Although the technology is still in its early stages, we can attest that it has enormous potential. But so far, little has been written about the blockchain's potential uses in the national security space, where blockchain technology could be enormously useful, but if mishandled, however, it could also pose a lot of dangers. To maximize the usefulness and mitigate the dangers, it would be wise for the United States to take advantage of its early technological lead before competitors inevitably catch up. Fortunately, there are a myriad ways it could do so. Blockchains could revolutionize sectors including financial services, healthcare, data storage, and corporate supply chain management. They also have important applications for national security. Blockchains, for instance, could change supply chain management for defense contracting. One of the Defense Department's chief concerns regarding new defense systems is that the components are manufactured all over the world, so it is possible that suppliers close to a foreign government could install undetectable backdoors for spying. Faulty microchips or skulking spyware are real risks in today's opaque global supply chains. The blockchain's accurate and detailed ledger could reduce these risks by tracking what each subcontractor supplies and ensuring that each component is traceable. For example, if a microchip is produced in China for a plane's onboard computer, a Defense Department auditor could see who made it, when it was installed, and how it was modified. Each action would be added to the blockchain, provided a detailed, unalterable contract history. Blockchains could also securely manage the identification of contractors and government employees. Anyone who has applied for security clearance knows how cumbersome and paper-based the process is. With the blockchain, personal information gathered during a security screening could be verified, disaggregated, and encrypted and inserted into a blockchain, after which the original data could be erased from all individual servers. Individuals would have greater control over who can access what aspects of their personal information by attaching permissions to specific elements of their encrypted digital ID. For example, if an individual might allow a potential employer access to specific Social Security information while providing only a driver's license number to another. Because comprehensive personal data would no longer be stored in one central server, hacks like the one into the U.S. Office of Personnel Management back in 2015 could become something of the past, and the blockchain would minimize risks of identity theft and manipulation. The government could also use blockchains to secure interagency communications and improve digital record keeping. Rather than storing key information in a single agency's archives, the blockchain would provide a decentralized database that many agencies could access. For example, in a multi-agency law enforcement sting, an FBI investigator could add new evidence to a joint blockchain which is time-stamped, digitally signed, and instantaneously shared across all permissioned entities. Someone like leaker Chelsea Manning could easily have been prevented from gaining access to every State Department cable because she clearly had no need to know. The blockchain eliminates the need to secure permission each time one agency requires access to data and makes transparent who accessed what. In cybersecurity, the distributed and immutable nature of the blockchain would allow for rapid recognition of hacks and timely responses. Because each block in a chain is encrypted with its own unique identifier, or hash, along with that of the previous block, it is impossible to manipulate any one block without changing each subsequent block in the chain. To do this would require massive computing power and would be immediately evident to each node in the system. It is therefore much easier to detect an attack and quickly identify how data is being manipulated. There are, of course, some obstacles and potential downsides to the use of blockchains in the world of national security. Even more than with other groundbreaking technologies, blockchains are still an internationally ungoverned space. Where academic researchers, largely from the United States, dominated the early days of the Internet, blockchains are truly cross-border, with millions around the world participating. Fraudulent initial coin offerings and other get-rich-quick schemes have already created confusion and could even hamper further innovation. While the blockchain is encrypted, it is vulnerable where it meets the real world, and human error can occur. A blockchain ledger is still only as safe as the hardware security modules protecting its digital access keys. Hacks of cryptocurrency exchanges have become common, and up to 1/3 of all bitcoins are thought to be missing. A hack on a single node will not compromise a widely distributed system, but if the network is concentrated within a few large mining operations, another Ethereum heist could occur. To strengthen network security and be deployable at scale, as in the case of a government agency, industry leaders should coordinate and develop a more comprehensive blockchain security architecture. Adding to the confusion, the largest blockchains can be very slow and insecure. So companies are creating increasing numbers of private blockchains. This leads to a proliferation of isolated networks and incompatible technology. Remember Long Blockchain, or rather the company formerly known as Long Island Iced Tea Corp., that saw its stock skyrocket after it's changed its name to refer to the foundational technology behind cryptocurrency, and made a vague pivot to globally scalable blockchain technology solutions? Well, turns out that might not have been so smart. As per Bloomberg, the SEC, which is the U.S. federal agency tasked with protecting investors from fraud and other financial crimes, has subpoenaed Long Blockchain. This is not commonly viewed as a good thing. Bloomberg wrote, the agency asked for certain documents, the company said in a regulatory filing Wednesday, without disclosing further details. The subpoena was dated July 10th. Quote, the company is fully cooperating with the SEC's investigation. The company cannot predict or determine whether any proceeding may be instituted by the SEC in connection with the subpoena or the outcome of any proceeding that may be instituted. End quote. That's incredibly vague. Shortly after changing its name and seeing massive spike in the value of its stock, Long Blockchain canceled plans to raise several $1 million through a stock offering and purchase 1,000 Bitcoin mining rigs. As Bloomberg noted, the company was kicked off the NASDAQ stock exchange in April of 2018 after both NASDAQ accused it of misleading investors, and it fell below the minimum value of $35 million needed to maintain its placement. Long Blockchain now hovers at a value of about $5 million, well below both the nearly $70 million it shot up to after changing its name in December and the roughly $20 million it was originally worth before that. By the way, in a January address, SEC Chairman Jay Clayton told the audience that the agency might be looking into any company dumb enough to, say, change its name to Blockchain R Us, and then sell stock without provide adequate disclosure about those changes and the risks involved. He said, in part, I doubt anyone in this audience thinks it would be acceptable for a company with no meaningful track record in pursuing the commercialization of distributed ledger or blockchain technology to 1. Start a dabble in blockchain activities, 2. Change its name to something like Blockchain R Us, and 3. Immediately offer securities without providing adequate disclosure to Main Street investors about those changes and the risks involved. The SEC is looking closely at the disclosures of public companies that shift their business models to capitalize on the perceived promise of distributed ledger technology. and whether the disclosures comply with the securities law, particularly in the case of an offering, end quote. Surely this theoretical blockchain R us is very different to the real long blockchain, and they're going to sort this little misunderstanding out pronto, I'm sure. Right now on BlockVerge.com, you can read the stories covered in today's podcast, along with articles on what the SEC commissioner said about a Bitcoin ETF, which controversial activist got $26,000 worth of Bitcoin sent to them, and a whole lot more. And as always, we close out our show by looking at the top 3 cryptos on the leaderboard. Today, Bitcoin sitting at 73.82, down 2.02 for the day. Ethereum sitting at 408.42, down 0.6, and Ripple up 1.85, sitting at 43.881 cents. Well, that's it for the Block Verge podcast for Friday, August 3rd, 2018. Thank you for listening. For BlockVerge.com, I am Derek Newman. We're off for the weekend, and I will talk to you on Monday.